The show, Lorrie Blitch. She's a business owner for the past 19 years and owns Magellan Christian Academies in Phoenix, Arizona. We're going to talk about something that I talk about on the show, and previously in Jacksonville, Florida, too, as well. Her schools have won all kinds of awards, including Declaration of Magellan Day by the mayor of Jacksonville, Florida. That was back in 2010. I could go on and on about her accolades, but I wanted to make sure that I get to the meat of her schools and what we're talking about here. So, Lorrie, thanks so much for joining us.
Well, thank you, Kate. It's great being back on your show again.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Because, one of the things, and this is that other sidebar thing, you're the published author of children's books, and you've even gotten the gold star status on Amazon. And that last time you were here, that's exactly what we talked about. Now we're talking about the schools. And the first question that comes to mind is, how did you become involved in these private schools?
Well, I kind of saw over the years of indoctrination going on in campuses. I saw not only at the college level, which I have taught at the college level, but also now in the high school. It is now in the middle school and the elementary, which is just completely surprises me. And now it is spilling over to the early learning academies and schools. And it was concerning me. And I said, we've got to get back to traditional academic learning. And over the last 60 years, I just noted that we have moved away from content academia and we've moved towards more ideological control of schools. And that's not academia. And it's And I remember when I was getting my master's degree years ago, I saw a movie just popped up one day. It was called Idiocracy. And it's a rather crude movie, but I think it kind of gives the viewer a sense of how society disintegrates when people are not properly educated. So I wanted to open Magellan Academy because I wanted to capture children at a very young age when their mind is most open to learning. I wanted to put in their faith-based Judeo-Christian principles, teach them values, and also teach math and science because that is so fundamentally important to children at a young age to develop those pathways in their brain. And I wanted to teach from a solid foundation of a good curriculum that is pretty much laid out without much wiggle room for the teachers, because I tightly control the education in my schools. I just don't let anybody willy-nilly teach it as they want. I tightly control it here as to what's taught in my school. But we teach traditional academic learning, which is what I wanted, where we teach phonics rather than memorization. And today they've kind of gotten away from phonics and to more the memorization type reading, which memorization is fine, but anybody who's in academia knows that memorization is kind of a lower form of learning. It's not your higher level learning where you apply things that you learn. For instance, some people made the argument to me, well, is it anatomy? But is it anatomy memorization? I said, yes, but you can memorize all the bones, but you got to be able to know where they go in the body. So you got to apply that knowledge of where those bones are. So I believe in teaching the concepts. We believe in teaching phonics, proper way to read, etc. And then once they learn that, then they commit that to memory. So those are the things that we do here at Magellan. We've had great success with our test scores have been excellent. I just had a parent here the other day, and she was talking to me, and she says, my daughter is doing so well in school now, and she says, as a result, we live probably about 15 to 18 miles from you, but we drive this distance just to bring our son. Those are some really great feedback that I get. And what's interesting, Kate, I was in New Orleans a few years ago, and I was at a school kind of watching about some different teaching techniques and things of that type. And there was a little girl by the name of Taylor, and she was about 8 or so years old. She was a very industrious young girl, and she goes to get this little manipulative building tools here, all back together, putting them in logical order, and I'm watching her. Well, this other little girl pops over by her and says, I want that. I want to play with that. And Taylor looks at the little girl and says, no. So the little girl goes to the teacher and says, I want that. I want to play with that. And so the teacher goes to little Taylor and says, Taylor, you know the rules. We have to share everything. And I thought to myself, whoa, time out. This little girl took the effort to took this off the shelf, put everything back together, which was clearly in a mess. She sorted everything, and then she started building. And then this other little girl gets upset with her because she wouldn't share it and just tosses some of the things into the floor. But the teacher tried to get tried to get Taylor to share her things. And so I took the little girl by the hand when the teacher got her attention got diverted. I took the little girl by the hand. I showed her something else and redirected her. So I got her involved into something else. So I went to the teacher and I said, the philosophy of sharing, you said that everybody has to share. Is that correct? She said, yes, it makes us become better adults. And I said, but why should she share something that she got herself and put together just because this little girl wants it? She goes, because as adults, we have to learn as adults we share everything. And I said, okay, well, if you believe that philosophy, then count me in. How about you share your bank account with me? And then all of a sudden, that was, oh no, hands off I said, no, you can't pick and choose what you want to share. If you believe that we should teach children to share everything they have, and then that makes us better adults so that we share. And I said, that makes no logical sense to me. I said, because now what you're teaching that other little girl is, one, that she can take away from somebody something that they have, but the second thing is to covet what somebody else has. And I said, so you're teaching her all the wrong values. And of course, she and I had a nice little dialogue, and I said, but I'm still waiting for that bank account so we can share that.
Wow, what a great example. Yeah.
Yeah. And, those are the kind of things that are being taught in schools anymore. And I stand in complete amazement of that.
And, you talked about influences, and you talked about the curriculum and obviously what you've seen. And of course, for 19 years running Magellan Christian Academies, as I mentioned, previously in Jacksonville, now in Phoenix, Arizona, and then the reaction you've gotten from some parents. You talk about Ayn Rand, and that's a book I read, Atlas Shrugged. And how did that book affect your beliefs and about business and government, what we're talking about, that also wraps into what these kids are learning?
Well, I read the book. I was a military officer at the time, and I was up going through Charleston, South Carolina. It was during the time of Desert Storm, and I was mobilized up to the Northeast. And I go through Charleston, South Carolina. I was in the historic district, and I saw a book called The Fountainhead, which was a book written prior to Atlas Shrugged. And you always want to just kind of thumb through the book, read through the pages. It was interesting, so I read the book. But a couple of years later, though, I read that book, Atlas Shrugged, and written by Ayn Rand. And for your readers, if they're not, or the listeners, if they've never read the book, it's a life-changing book, literally. It's a story about the United States that's becoming more and more dysfunctional. The government takes more and more control over businesses through regulations, collectivist policies. And in the book, it's what Ayn Rand refers to irrational altruism. And the government regulations that become so stifling to businesses and inventions, and the individual human spirit just is becoming so harnessed that these people eventually revolt. And John Galt, who's kind of a main character in the book, who believes in unleashing the individual human spirits to reach your full potential, he takes them away and puts them in a place, I believe it's called Gulch or Colorado. You can't see it from the air, and you can't see it if you drive past it. So you take all these smart, productive people and you put them in a place and you take them away from a dysfunctional society. And kind of in the book at the end, the United States is kind of left to defend for itself for people who believe in taking from hardworking people and voting people in to take from them, and then the country just collapses. And then the thought of the book is they'll bring all these people back out to build this up. But I was, as a military officer, I was in many third world countries, and I just saw the abject poverty and the servitude with people, and it just made me cringe, because you always want to see people do well in life, and you want them to have opportunities. And I was in so many of these third world countries, and you could just see the despair on the people's faces. There was nothing for them, and their governments had just inflicted servitude upon them. But in contrast, when I get back to the United States, I would see how capitalism unleashed the individual human spirit and creativity and our burst of technological and scientific innovations.
Hang on a second, Lorrie. We're going to continue with Lorrie Blitch in just a second here on America Tonight.